Is anybody else feeling all the pressure to be great all the time? I don't know about you, but when you think about sources of stress, that is stressing me out. I read an article the other day and it promised that I could have the greatest year ever. Can you imagine 365 days of greatness? I don't know about you, but I can't live with that kind of pressure. What if I did something like really great on the first day? Then what do I have to do the second day and the third day, much less the 365th day? I can't even do greatness for a week. Usually by Friday, I'm so stressed out that I go home and eat a whole bunch of cookies. Doesn't really seem like greatness to me. Can you imagine what it would feel like to feel good enough? I know it may sound kind of odd in the beginning, but just to be good enough. What if your boss said, hey, you know what? You're good enough. Or you came home from work and your spouse was like, you know what? You are good enough. Can you imagine what that might feel like? I can remember one time I was working with a client and he was a surgeon. And I don't know if you know many surgeons, but they tend to be a little high-strung perhaps. And I remember him saying something in the course of our conversation, and he said, the enemy of good is better. And when he first said that, I thought it was the oddest thing that I had ever heard, and I needed him to explain it. What do you mean the enemy of good is better? And he said that in med school, the hardest thing for him to learn was that the job of a suture was to hold tissue and keep it from bleeding, not to be the best suture that any physician had ever done in all practice of medicine. And he was a competitive guy and he wanted to do things well. And it was so difficult for him to learn that the enemy of good is better, because if the suture's good enough and it's holding the tissue, if you start messing with it, you damage tissue and the tissue starts to bleed. I kind of started thinking about that. Like, how much pressure I put on myself to be great all the time, and how much damage that does to my tissue. Not my physical tissue, but the tissue of my self-worth, my identity, that I have to be great all the time, which I'm not. And if I'm not, well, then I'm not great. Here's something I'm going to try. When I go home today, I'm just going to tell myself, you know what? You were good enough today. And when I go out with my friends later and we're talking, you know what? They're going to be good enough. And I would encourage you that maybe one of the hidden stressors that we're all fighting is having to be great all the time. And maybe it would be okay for us to just be good enough.